Another day, another name in the portal that I think UCLA should go after. Maalik Murphy, former SoCal kid. The Bruins should bring him home.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and you can get a big return on FanDuel by placing a $5 bet as a new customer. You win that $5 bet, you get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. And where we get started today, we're again analyzing the portal. UCLA, I think, has to solidify the quarterbacking position. They have to get somebody out of the portal, is my assumption, whether he is the gung-ho starter or somebody that's going to compete and force the youngsters to get better. I don't know, but I think there's a big name who I mentioned in the open, Maalik Murphy, who now jumps in and slots in as the second best quarterback available in the portal for anybody. And he was a starter at Duke, played some significant snaps at Texas for a team that was bidding at the time in 23 for a CFP berth when their starting quarterback went down. So UCLA, there's plenty of options. Darian Mensah apparently might be the heir apparent at Duke for Maalik Murphy. But I think Murphy, a SoCal kid, went to Sarah High School, could be a good fit for UCLA. Again, all UCLA has to do is compile guys, talented, a lot of them from SoCal, or go to the portal and come bring them back to the West Coast. Here are Murphy's numbers, all right? Murphy this year threw for 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, did at times struggle with accuracy against North Carolina earlier this year. He threw for under 45% with a completion percentage. Against Virginia Tech, completed less than 50% of his passes. Murphy did have a couple of 3-interception games, but he also had some big ones as well, including a big day against Miami, who at the time was number 5, had 325 yards and 3 touchdowns to go along with 3 picks, but he put up big numbers, 332 yards, 3 touchdowns against Virginia Tech. So he can throw the ball all over the yard for a quarterback that, for UCLA, 4-star option currently in the portal, probably better and more experienced in various ways than what UCLA has on the roster. And yes, youth is not going to get experience if they don't even get a chance to play. But what did Indiana do this year? Well, they went after a 4-star transfer quarterback who put up some numbers, brought up a lot of guys from James Madison, hit their portal hard with 31 new players in the Indiana program. And that's how the Hoosiers went from one of the best one-year turnarounds one can make for a program that was starved for football success. That we would, we all joke Indiana. Well, they went and they made it to the playoff in the first year of the expanded playoff. And here UCLA is stealing that offensive coordinator. All the Indiana fans are mad with Tino Sunseri coming over. They brought in McDaniel as a flip at the last moment, but you want that guy that can start right away. Maalik Murphy, he's going to have his hiccups, but you could do a lot worse than somebody who started at 2 Power 4 schools, put up some numbers, and with what could be an offensive wizard in the making if Sunseri can bring over some Indiana magic and craft his own plays a lot easier, a lot simpler than what UCLA had to implement last year for Bieniemy's stuff, then all of a sudden UCLA can look a lot better on the offensive side of the football with somebody that still has 2 years of eligibility. Now you could always wonder, hey, he's been at 3. This would be his 3rd school, 3rd stop in just a few years. Okay, but that is a good home run swing. Big swing for the fences for UCLA to go after a kid from Inglewood, find something, hey, bring him home to SoCal. Like, all right, Maalik Murphy could fit. And how does this fit the Indiana model? Well, I was looking at what UCLA has because they lost somebody in the offensive line, Nicky Prongos. He announced his intention to go to the portal. So UCLA's O-line room is getting a lot smaller with guys who are experienced and hopeful guys that could leap forward into starting potential. And this is at the time where it seems like Deshaun Foster's probably had all his exit meetings with most of the players. I would assume by now that the portal's open, he's going to have had all of his exit meetings with these players for the end of the season in 24. Well, now UCLA's O-line room is small, and what Indiana did last year was go after 3 offensive linemen, yes, a lot of them they had prior relationships with. So the Bruins have to build something in front of whatever quarterback that can come in, and whether it's the guy they're already potentially giving phone calls to, like Salter from Liberty, maybe it's an absolute phone call. I think you must go after Maalik Murphy, at least give him a ring, see what happens, call his agent, whatever it is, throw some sort of a bag at him, and then you can go after the offensive line. But you can't go after 5 guys. Remember, Chip Kelly did this a couple of years ago, and not all these O-line guys are going to really work right away. UCLA has to get better at developing the O-line, masking the issues, and calling better plays and scheming for the lack of protection up front that they had the last couple of seasons. Well, as we saw, Chip Kelly with less talent was able to run the ball a little more. Eric Bieniemy doesn't pride himself on running the football as successfully, and it didn't work in a very short implementation of his complicated West Coast scheme. But here are some O-line guys that could really help UCLA up front. Luke Baklenko, I've already talked about him. He's a Stanford guy, would easily fit just coming down the coast, fits the grades, offensive tackle, could easily slot in for UCLA. Where, last year they were down to a 4th-string tackle at some point. All right, they were really hurting. So I think Luke Baklenko is a guy UCLA could go, as they've already lost Nicky Prongos. I think they already have, 2 graduating seniors on the O-line. They're losing some talent. They're losing some beef. All right, so if you're going to go after Maalik Murphy, you can't expect 5-6 guys in the O-line, but some other names I've seen are Xavier Gregg, Will Reed, one of those guys or a couple of those guys at the top of the O-line on the offensive tackle side and the interior offensive line side. A couple of those are Liberty guys. So maybe UCLA goes, like how Indiana did, bring a lot of guys from JMU, bring that cohesive unit. You go after a Liberty offensive lineman, go after another offensive tackle from Liberty. You bring in Salter, and maybe you can get 3 guys that have played together and make it easier to transition into a new system. That's kind of what Indiana did, pretty much bringing all the former Dukes, James Madison Dukes players to Indiana, implementing a toughness, somebody who knows the system and turning that into a program that is all of a sudden a playoff system. Or UCLA could go after somebody like a Hunter Zambrano, top of the line for the interior offensive line to really bolster the interior. And another option UCLA could have on the interior offensive line is a Tyreek Poindexter, right? That's a guy who was at VMI for 4 years, somebody who's 6'5", 325 pounds, just about. And if you're going to find somebody for a 1-year stopgap on the offensive line while you develop all the youngsters they're starting to recruit over the last couple of classes, Poindexter comes in as a 4-year guy, knows how to start, played the last couple of years in the SoCon. That's a guy I trust, a 4th-year older man compared to a youngster, 18, 19-year-old, who some can start right away, but somebody who's been in the works, getting better, getting bigger, getting stronger for 4 to 5 years. Somebody who's not necessarily in the top of the offensive line transfer portal, but 3 stars. Indiana, you look up and down the roster, all the guys they brought in last year were only 3 stars, pretty much, other than 2 quarterbacks, 4-star freshman and a 4-star transfer in Curtis Rourke. All those other guys, mostly 3 stars prior to the season. So UCLA doesn't always have to hit on a 5-star recruit. They got to get some bulk. They got to hit right. So maybe you go all Liberty guys like Kadon Salter. You get him from Liberty. You bring 2 former offensive linemen in front of him. Maybe that leads to, a lot better cohesion in the front. Or you go after what Indiana did and Sunseri and the staff was able to do. Find that sneaky option that's good up front. Unlock something maybe with a Maalik Murphy or somebody already on the UCLA roster and hit right with, hey, there's a guy in the Stanford who's leaving Stanford like Baklenko on the tackle side. You bring in a Poindexter, guys who have started, who played a lot of football, you insert them, and you're probably going to have, I think, a little bit more success than just trying to hit on 4 different guys with someone you're probably expecting to graduate in 4 years. So that'd be a little easier, I think, to bring someone over in the portal for UCLA. Somebody goes to Stanford, easy to bring in the grades-wise. And they've started 15 to 20 games. I like those odds to bolster what UCLA needs up front. Now, the other thing is, too, UCLA has to get a lot better at developing the offensive linemen in the last couple of years because they had some NFL talent being churned out again and again. 21, 22, a little bit in 23, but there are some weaknesses and some holes these last couple of years that the defenses from the opposition have been able to exploit for UCLA or against UCLA. All right. So I think absolutely go after Maalik Murphy. He does have some struggles. He wouldn't exactly be a Heisman runner starter, but hey, it's not like Garbers was fantastic, not like Dante Moore was fantastic. Anything with a better system, a little more protection, and just finding ways to be a lot better and simpler in 2025 offensively could let UCLA become a much better offensive team. And that's what they need to be. Simplify and get better. You don't have to find the top 5-star offensive lineman to get the best out of him. Maybe building up depth is what UCLA needs more than just one superstar lineman. Build them up. Find the guys that have been there that want to go through the works one more year. Get that degree from UCLA, whether it's a master's or finish their 4-year. And that's, I think, where UCLA needs to target. Guys like a Pondexter, guys like a Baklenko, play different positions in the O-line, and could probably fit in quite well, although maybe Sunseri's schemes need something different. Only time will tell. And they got to start making moves on some of these guys. I know they're making calls, but something's got to get some commitments coming up soon. Meanwhile, next for UCLA, they are taking on Arizona in men's basketball. These big stretch of games is going to debate and change whether UCLA is looked at as a 6, 7, 8 seed, or are they going to flirt with being a top 4 seed, 2 seed, and make their bracket much easier come March when they want to go on a big run in 25 as an inaugural Big Ten tournament team. We'll talk about that next. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Again, the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to bet live bets, place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Again, visit FanDuel.com to join today. All you got to do is get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, cruising on here in Locked On UCLA. Zach with you guys. We're going over to basketball on the men's side. The latest bracketology was released for the men's basketball side by Joe Lunardi. He's been doing it for so long, so I'm going to lean on his model right now. UCLA was going from an 8-9 projection just prior to those first 2 Big Ten wins, all right? Tournament team-esque, but any mistakes, and you can flirt with being on the bubble. You win a big game like you do at Oregon. You beat Washington. You don't lose those games you're supposed to at home. You're pretty much banked in, you can bank on being in the field. Now, to make your path so much easier and not having to go like you did in 21, which included overtime against Michigan State, first 4 to Final 4, well, it's a little different. UCLA can make their path so much easier. They're going to give so much love to these super conference teams that UCLA, yes, they're going to probably suffer 4 to 5 losses this year, maybe 6 to 7, something ungodly. But if you go take care of business against these teams these next couple of weeks, then UCLA is going to have a good resume, a strong resume that shouldn't see them any lower than a 3 seed unless they just completely fall apart during Big Ten play. Case in point, Arizona right now, if you looked at their resume, surprisingly in the bracketology latest results, they are currently a first team out, a team that was close to being a top 10 team. They've lost a couple of big ones, including at home to Duke, when that was a shocking win for Duke at Arizona, a true road game. They went actually, I think, led almost wire to wire against the Wildcats. But for them losing Umar Ballo and a different of a team under Tommy Lloyd that won the Pac-12 last year and was able to make it to a tournament, a little different in 24 to 25. And I think Arizona might be susceptible to a loss in a home state neutral site game against the Bruins at the Footprint Center. And maybe the Bruins can come to town, find a way to get the job done. You beat Arizona, all right. That means you beat a team from the Big 12. Next thing you know, you're going to have North Carolina in New York, right? You go across the country, a lot of travel. First chance for the Bruins to get a test of what those long flights on the jet will be during Big Ten play. You play North Carolina team that's already got 4 losses, right? They give up a lot of points to any Power 4 teams. Took them a little bit before they even dusted Hawaii in their game at the Stan Sheriff Center on the Islands. And yes, they won by 18, but anytime they played close games, they've been down 20 and come back and fought. North Carolina is one of those weird teams. You beat them, and when North Carolina maybe figures it out at the second half of this season in the ACC, then all of a sudden UCLA can claim a win over a hopefully top contender in the Big 12, maybe another top contender in the ACC. And then you play Gonzaga, who, if you actually look at the mid-major poll, might actually be second, first, depending on how the mid-major poll is. But Gonzaga probably should have beaten Kentucky in their home state, not their home floor, but their home state, against the Wildcats when they were up 18 points at one point, 16 at the break, and lost it overtime at home, quote unquote, by a point. So Gonzaga, pretty good. And if UCLA can go 2-1 during those stretch, especially if they can beat North Carolina and Arizona, that'll help the resume even more. I think for a UCLA fan soul perspective, we want to beat Gonzaga. Like, we're tired of losing and having heartbreaks versus Gonzaga. But it'll hurt the resume less if UCLA goes beat Arizona in their home state, North Carolina across the country, middle of the day, Saturday national primetime games. Wouldn't hurt. It's kind of the first introduction for fans into the college basketball world mid-December. I know the CFP is going to be going on, but hey, us basketball teams, we're going to be watching that. All the Arizona fans, all the North Carolina fans, all the UCLA fans, that is what we're going to be watching in December. And you certainly know UCLA Gonzaga is going to command a lot of attention, especially if that game's not a blowout and it turns into a March Madness-esque game later in the season. So the Bruins, 7-1, 2-0 in Big Ten play, already have a leg up on the majority of the Big Ten teams just by starting 2-0 and having a big road win at Oregon. A big road win. That's a huge win to get, because not a lot of teams are going to go across the country, flying to Eugene, which hopefully they pack the place. Hopefully they pack the place at Pauley Pavilion too. Hopefully all these West Coast teams don't just get overrun by the Big Ten fans trying to get some warmer weather of sorts going west. And they beat all these teams that fly across the coast, because holding serve in Big Ten play is going to be huge. So it's a must for UCLA to steal some of these non-conference games early, beat USC at the Galen Center, beat Washington and Seattle, and you win those West Coast road games that some of these Big Ten teams just aren't going to be able to do because of the travel, then UCLA is going to have that 2-game difference all of a sudden turn into a Big Ten 2 seed, Big Ten 3 seed, maybe even win the Big Ten outright in year one as a Big Ten member in the basketball conference. It's stacked top to bottom, right? You could see teams that are 6 games under 500, and they've got fabulous freshman players coming out who are strong, like a Rutgers that's been, touted as, all right, going to be dangerous and dynamic, but with 2 5-star freshmen, how are they going to play right away? Well, they're taking some hiccups, like losing to a Kennesaw State, losing big early and only losing by 2 late. Like Purdue, all right, they look good, but then they go to Penn State and lose. Those are games UCLA is taking advantage of by beating Oregon early on. And I can't wait for this Arizona game. I'll do a little more research on it as the week goes on. We'll talk about it. But, with Arizona losing some of that size, they're not going to be able to replicate what they did last year by beating the Bruins a couple of times with the size, harming them a couple of years ago with more size. It's not that same team, I think, that Caleb Love, he's not going to maybe put up 45 and they get the interior presence. The Bruins kind of match him in the backcourt and maybe handle the front court just enough to get some wins against Arizona and North Carolina specifically. Speaking of big-time wins, the UCLA women, Corey Close tied the all-time program record for coaching victories at UCLA. She's at, 296, about to break it with the next UCLA victory. And they've got a couple of cupcakes coming forward, and the latest bracketology was released on the women's side. They're not the number 1 overall seed. I say, what? Nothing delivers comfort and joy just like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. Guaranteed perfection every single bite. Right now, you can have an unforgettable gift with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off the promo code COLLEGE. It's a carefully, thoughtfully curated gift package that features gourmet favorites with the gifting experts from Omaha Steaks. Legendary steaks and let's not forget about mouthwatering desserts. Save 50% off for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. And our listeners get an extra $30 off with the promo code COLLEGE. 50% off at omahasteaks.com. omahasteaks.com, 50% off, and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. All right, here we go. Last segment, we're talking the UCLA women's basketball team that currently stands as the top-ranked team in the country. All right, number one, and yet the latest bracketology from Charlie Kareem has UConn number one overall. UConn. UCLA has arguably the best win of the season. Some say Notre Dame's thrashing at USC is bigger and better. I think the Bruins, having beaten South Carolina by like 20 at home, should stand to be one of the biggest wins of the season. Yes, Notre Dame going to USC and beating them down in the fourth quarter, that's significant, although I think there's some cracks in the USC armor this year, and UCLA is the better team after the depth they have. I think that's the case as long as they can play in the clutch. UCLA is looking like a Big Ten favorite right now. If UConn loses one of these big non-conference games coming up, then the Bruins will have an absolute inside track to them being the overall number one seed in the tournament, which, early projections, they said is a 1 seed. That's good. But until then, UCLA, not there. Big thing is they're 9-0, 1-0 in Big Ten play. Only an 11-point win at Washington, a Husky team that's 7-3 after that loss to UCLA. But the Bruins had to go to Seattle. After traveling to Hawaii and back, the Bruins have already been to Paris. They've been to Hawaii. They've flown up to Seattle, which is still like a 2.5-hour flight there, and then coming back. They're going to have to go up to the Chase Center soon enough to go play Creighton. And they're going to have a long East Coast swing in the beginning at some point in January of Big Ten play. And some of those games are against ranked teams like in Nebraska. There are some teams on the women's side that are slowly sneaking in the rankings. They're going to be very tough matchups for the Bruins that I think they should handle. If you remember last year's Pac-12, even against those top 20 teams on the road, UCLA did not have an easy time in the season last year, like going to Oregon State, who made an Elite Eight. Went down to the buzzer, and the Bruins lost heartbreakingly, right? All those games were tough. So let's take a look at what this UCLA lineup did against Washington. They led from the first quarter, pulled away in the second, couldn't really put away Washington in the third, but the Bruins kept Washington at an arm's distance, 8 to 9 points, not really dominant 20 to 15-point lead, but it's not like Washington truly cut it to a 2-point game. They made a run around 5 to 4 minutes left, but UCLA, like the good team they are, put them away and put them to bed. What we've started to see now with the health of Kiki Rice, since missing the first couple of games with the shoulder injury coming into the season, including missing that Louisville game, gave valuable experience to Alina Arnasalo. But now we've seen some of the transfers and the newcomers that were taking up starting spots, like Gardner. She went out of the starting lineup, then came back in. London Jones, who is out of the starting lineup, she came back in. So that gives UCLA 2 3-point shooting options on the court to start the game. Kiki Rice taking Arnasalo's spot means the Bruins have a true point guard off the bench to come in and play 24, 25 minutes, which she did, 4 points. And she's not going to put up the same amount of points as she had been earlier when she's being asked to do a lot less as the Bruins are turning into their final product throughout the season. But now Kiki Rice is going to play 36 minutes a game, 18 points, 5 assists, 0 turnovers, and 4 boards while shooting 8 of 13. Like, that's the player UCLA was missing when they started the first part of the season, when they struggled against Colgate, when they struggled against Louisville early before winning late. While Arnasalo still making some freshman mistakes, 3 turnovers out of UCLA's 11, but she's got a pretty solid shooting percentage and is doing a lot as a true freshman on a stacked team that has high expectations, and I think really met the moment as a player coming in. And UCLA, oh, hey, one of our best players is out. Can you start and play a lot of minutes? Valuable to her growth immediately. So now we're going to see Gabby Jaquez, who's played 35 minutes, 11 points, one of 3 double-digit scores for the Bruins at Washington. And another thing for UCLA, Lauren Betts, 23 points, almost always shoots better than 50%, usually can challenge for the nation's crown in best field goal shooting percentage. The one thing I thought was odd in this game for UCLA is that Lauren Betts, 23 points, only 3 rebounds. Jaquez had 7 rebounds for the UCLA women's basketball team, more than Lauren Betts. So what is UCLA going to do as they grow and build over the season? Well, they didn't shoot for 3 really good, and that was with Gardner and Jones playing side by side. But now that Kiki Rice is playing 36 minutes, that means the bench gets a little younger and deeper, right? There's a different option when you bring in Janai Barker with 13 minutes off the bench. Dugalich, who we've seen go in and out of the starting lineup, she's a bench option, a bench weapon. And I think what Corey Close is going to have to do is combine what's the best starting option, which is not going to be your closing 5, I think. The starting 5 against Washington was somewhat the closing 5 in a sense, right? You could always see Jaquez, you could always see Gardner, London Jones, Kiki Rice, and Betts on the floor to end the game. Yet, if you mixed in Arnasalo in the lineup, you bring in Gardner or Jones off the bench, that just means you're getting so much better. Kind of like what the men are doing, keeping Mac on the bench or trying to do and make him be a closing player. Close is still trying to figure out which of those players is going to be the right fit during portions of the game that they don't have to just ride Kiki Rice for 40 minutes or Lauren Betts for 40 minutes or Jaquez for 40 minutes, which they pretty much did in this win versus Washington. Still, they're going to end up doing pretty good and finding ways to get the job done. They ended up winning 73-62, undefeated, true road win in Seattle, and that's how the Bruins are going to reign in Big Ten play. Number 1 overall in the country, so we got to get some love for that. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. Get your 8 clap going. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You see, fight. Let's go, Bruins. Let's get some players in the portal. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell me your thoughts. Who should the Bruins get? Yes, we're going to go and try and analyze all the positions, what they need, and with everything in the portal. Follow Locked On UCLA. Thanks for your support. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.